playing a battle mage in Neverwinter Nights. That's what we're going to explore in this Neverwinter Nights Tactica from the perspective of both a role-playing game, getting the best out of that, but also understanding that since Neverwinter Nights is based on the D&D 3.x rule set, it is a numbers game behind the scenes. You've got difficulty checks, DCs that you have to beat to hit an armor class, to cause damage, to have a spell pop off, to be able to influence dialogue, being able to beat those numbers and incorporate those numbers. We want to be able to do both. Now, what's interesting in Neverwinter Nights, there's two ways to approach a battle mage. The first is that you can take up to 3 character classes at a time and level them up independently. We see this with the prestige classes in that kind of you go in as a regular type class and you gain certain abilities and proficiency through questing, and then you can take on one of these elite classes. But you can also stack the regular classes. So one of the ways to build a battle mage is, of course, taking 2 or 3 different classes to get the intended effects that you want. A secondary way is to go in all as either a wizard or a sorcerer. Wizard or sorcerer, pushing that aspect of it and utilizing feats to manipulate certain things. The advantages and disadvantages of both. If you take multiple classes, then you are going to gain access to feats innately and not have to spend level ups to acquire them. So if I start in level 1 mage, I gain certain feats, I gain certain abilities. If I want to play a battle mage, meaning wear armor and maybe utilize certain weapons, by taking a level of fighter and now pouring into fighter, I gain those feats automatically. I will gain more feats quicker. But the challenge, of course, here we see being a DC-based system, difficulty-based system, D&D 3.x, is that I'm diluting my primary character class. If I'm a wizard level 10, but I'm a wizard 5, fighter 5, my wizard powers, the 5 and 5, are going to be much less. Availability to spells, availability to difficulty checks. That's why if I'm looking to play a battle mage, in my opinion, and you could do it either way, I want to be a pure mage class. I want to be a pure wizard or pure sorcerer class and spend the feats in order to replicate and the spells in order to replicate that battle mage perspective, as opposed to dipping into fighter, mage, or other classes, because I'm going to dilute that. So from that perspective, the first thing, of course, is armor. What you're seeing here is you're going to be spending feats to go into light, medium, and or heavy. And as you gain armor with your battle mage, there's arcane spell failure. This idea in the D&D rule set where in order to cast a spell, you're waving your hands around and you're making certain gestures and you're saying certain magic words. The game engine, by wearing armor, it might interfere with that. So there's a chance your spell will not work because it's very, very intricate. So with this, as you stack armor on, well, now it's one thing to lose a first level magic missile spell. It's another thing to lose a fireball or even a higher level spell. In combat, you can only memorize so many, and you're missing that round of combat and not doing damage. So generally speaking, a pure wizard class, the way that you get your armor class higher is through mage armor, through shield, through concealment, through certain elemental buffs. That's how you get the armor class up. The way a fighter gets their armor class up is wearing the armor. So my first question in playing a battle mage is, it's not so much about the protection to my armor class, because I can replicate that through spells. Wearing armor, am I really going to gain that much with the armor class? But those points are points, because certainly I might be able to get it higher if I'm wearing armor and do some of those buffs. The question here for armor for me, just to sidebar for a moment, and this is true of any character class, especially if you're going to be using feats or other classes to unlock things not inherent in a particular class. When you click on that screen to show your inventory, think of no spoilers here, there are different suits of armor. There are different magic items that not only buff your armor class, but give you clickies or abilities or spell effects. As a wizard, I can only by default wear robes. So there's a whole group of armor classes on that slot that I will not be able to use. By investing in light, medium, or heavy armor, I can now wear that armor and get a nice armor class bump, but open up a whole level of clickies, power-ups, and buffs that would not normally be available to my class. So when I play Battle Mage in Neverwinter Nights, it is about the armor class, but it's also about unlocking these clickies and utilizing it, and the buffs and certain suits of armor that give you some interesting and fun different things to do in the game. Now, how do we get around arcane spell failure? Well, the first is you could just kind of eat it, right? You could just kind of say, look, I'll play with the odds. We'll see what it is. Certain suits of armor are crafted better. Again, no spoilers for the class. So there's heavy armors that have a lower arcane spell failure. There's medium armors that have a lower arcane spell failure, which makes it kind of okay to play. You could invest in feats, normally meta magic feats where you can cast spells without arcane spell failure or without other aspects. They just auto cast off. The meta magic feats, though, are cool, but they occupy spell slots at a higher level. So if you meta magic missile, it's not a first level spell. It counts as a spell slot higher or two, depending on what it is. The question here, of course, is I'm already a little bit feet short because if I'm playing a pure wizard or sorcerer because I want to get the highest difficulty class possible and I don't want to dilute my character class, I'm taking 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or 5 different feats. And now by taking those feats, I don't have access to the meta magic. I'm going to be feat starved. So the first question in playing a battle mage is, I want that armor, but do I need all of it? Do I want to go in as a medium? I don't want necessarily light, medium, or heavy. Do I want to just stop at medium? But again, I leave that up to you. I think if you take light and medium, you can get some cool looks on your tune. You can boost up your armor class. You can get some cool clickies, and you have that. Now, the other part of a battle mage is a weapon, opening up some weapons to utilize, right? You have simple weapons as a mage. You're going to have to spend a feat. Again, these are feats that you're not spending innately on mage classes to put into weapons. So I want to unlock weapons. Where do you go from there? Sometimes when I play it, because I like playing sort of the exotic weapons, I'll take that feat. That locks out a lot of other weapons in the game because it's not like there's a lot of katanas running around in the game. I think if you take kind of normal martial weapons, you'll have access to a lot of different cool builds and a lot of different cool things to have. You're going to burn that feat. Now, the challenge here, though, is not so much the feat, is that D&D 3.x being this engine, as your character class, when you make an attack roll, you have to roll a d20 behind the scenes. You add up all of your pluses, all of your bonuses, all of your stuff, and if it beats the target's armor class, you're good. You hit. Well, the characters, as you level up, their base attack bonus, BAB, grows. A fighter class will grow much more than a wizard class. So you take your feat, you unlock longsword, you've got longsword ready to go, but then you realize I'm not hitting anything. My 4th level wizard is hitting nothing, but my 4th level fighter is hitting everything because a wizard doesn't advance as fast with the base attack bonus. So you are going to have to really, really start buffing those aspects, utilizing true strike, utilizing extra strength buffs to boost that up, utilizing different magic gear to get your number up. You're never going to hit as hard as a fighter, but you're going to have to use your spells to help boost your attack abilities. So I see as a wizard, battle mage, my primary thing is still the magic. But as I cycle through my magic spells, if I still have to fight, the sword or the secondary weapon is just that secondary. On the bonus side, by adding that in, again, no spoilers, there's a couple of magic swords that are kind of cool. They look kind of cool. They work kind of cool. They open up some clickies. You'll have a little bit of fun that you can't do with other character classes. Now, let's kind of talk about the sorcerer battle mage. Playing a sorcerer, going into light and medium armor, going into a weapon class, maybe exotic weapons. That's usually what I take for the katana. and then using my spells, taking a mix of spells, of sorcerer spells, because they don't memorize, they inherently cast, taking some that are attack-based, lightning bolt, fireball, magic missile, swarm, the usual stuff, but at the same time then taking true strike, concealment, armor class buffs, where, yes, I'm never going to be, if I'm a 10th level sorcerer, I'm never going to be a 10th level fighter in hand-to-hand combat. But with some spell buffs and with the right feats, I've got some interesting things that I can utilize. And then putting everything into sorcerer, but at a certain point dipping in maybe up to 5 levels of Dragon Disciple to get that extra boost of not only attack, but resistances, hit dice, and abilities. On a side note, feats to possibly consider. But again, we're burning feats. We have to really manage our feats. If you have to cut a feat, normally as a wizard, straight wizard, I would take combat casting because in-game there's a penalty if you cast within a certain radius. They're going to try and stop the spell. You are going to be hitting spells from a distance, but then when you close, or the enemies close with you, you might be fighting with your sword, but you're also going to be casting spells to do various things. Combat casting is a nice little buff in the beginning, but that's fine because I've got pure wizard feats I can take. If I'm going into a battle mage type class or a spell sword, then now, right, I'm dividing my feats. You can skip combat casting, and it'll be a little challenging at the lower levels, but then as you put skill points into concentration, it's only a +4 difference. Eventually, your concentration will get high enough that you don't need the combat casting anymore. So that's one way you can save a feat. Another thing to consider, it is normally a useless feat. It's a fun feat. It's normally useless. But on a battle mage, it completely works. Dirty Fighting. Dirty Fighting lets you throw an extra D4 damage, but you only get to make one attack. So normally you wouldn't take that on a martial class because you're like, well, at a certain point, a fighter is now going to have a base attack, but now get second attacks, third attacks. If you're playing a monk, if you're playing a rogue, you're going to get multiple attacks as you level up. A wizard doesn't get those till very, very later. Taking that feat works very, very well.